guys, welcome to A Little Bit of Monica. Since we just turned the clocks back this past week, I figured it was time to turn the clocks back just a little bit further and take a peek at all the books that I read in October. I am going to go pretty quickly through a lot of them because I had a very impressive reading month for me. I think this was one of my best months of the year so far. But first, I do want to go over some of the stats for the books that I read. I managed to try to read 19 books. I read 17 in completion and DNF'd 2 books. Of those 17 that I finished, 4 of them were arcs. And I'm very excited about this because it means I'm contributing to my NetGalley goal of turning around the books that I have arcs for very quickly, and 4 books is very impressive for 1 month. Let's go into some of the format stats that I have. I have really turned into an audiobook person. I don't listen to audiobooks by themselves that much because I can't focus that easily. However, I love using an audiobook along with physical or ebook. So I read 14 audiobooks during the month of October. Only one of those was audio alone, and that was a Libro ALC that I'll get to a little bit later. I read 9 physical books and 9 ebooks. And now let's do a very quick breakdown into the star ratings that I gave. I already mentioned I DNF'd 2 books. One of those, I was so confused about the plot. I didn't know what was happening. I made it 50% before DNFing, and I didn't know enough about the story to give it a rating, so I did not rate this one. However, the other book that I DNF'd, I did give it a 2-star rating because I can see the promise and I see where people would be interested in it, but for some reason it just was not hitting for me, and I did not care about the story enough to keep going. But I had no actual content issues or anything with it, so I gave it 2 stars because I know that other people would probably enjoy this book. It just was not for me. Then we go into the actual lowest rating I gave a book that I finished for this month was 3 stars. I had 4 3-star ratings. I had 8 4-star readings, which tells you that I really liked a lot of the books that I read this month, especially because I ended up having 5 5-star books in the month of October. And that is just so impressive for me because it means that I am loving the books that I am picking up, and I love that for me. So 5 stars feels really good. Let's just get right into kind of going through these books. I am going to go very briefly through most of these books because I talked about the first half of the month in my mid-month check-in. So make sure you go check out that video to get my in-depth reviews of the books that I read in the first half of the month. I am really briefly going to go through everything else. But then for the books that I did not talk about in the mid-month check-in, I will give a very brief review here just so you can hear a little bit more about the books that I read in the second half of the month. So starting off with the first book that I read in October was The Prospects by Katie Hoffman. This was a 4-star read that I had a really great time with. Next up was The 5-Year Lie by Serena Bowen, and this was a 3-star read. Followed by the first of my 5-star reads, and it was Heartstopper Volume 5 by Alice Oseman. This was not surprising at all. I knew I was gonna love it, so reading that book was so quick and so easy and amazing. Next up on the list, I am going to talk about all of these all together, even though I read them scattered throughout the month, but I read all 4 books in the Reynolds Protective Group series by Dr. Rebecca Sharp: Archer, Hunter, Gunner, and Ranger. I read all 4 of them, and guess what? They all earned 4 stars from me. I had pretty much a very equal reaction to each of the 4 books, so all 4 of them got 4 stars. Next up is an arc of the Cotton Candy Massacre Part Treats. This is the 3rd book in the series by Christopher Robertson, and this was a 3-star read of a horror splatterpunk book, followed by another arc of Try Not to Die at Deathfest by Mark Tullis and Glenn Hedden, and this was another 3-star read, and this one was a choose-your-own-adventure horror, so I died a lot in reading that book. I made some terrible decisions, and it was a great time. Followed by yet another arc, and this one was Wish I Were Here by Melissa Weisner, and this one was another one of my 5-star reads. I loved this book so much. It was so much fun and so cute. So love having 5 stars, especially in an arc form. Next up, it was a 4-star read, Mayfly by CJ Lead. This was exciting to really like because I met the author literally the day that I read that book, so that was really fun. And then the last book that I did talk about in my mid-month check-in is Mistress of Lies by K.M. Enright, and unfortunately this was the DNF that I knew nothing about, so I couldn't actually give it a rating. However, this is the Illumicrate copy, and it is so pretty. The naked hardcover is one of my favorite things ever, and I'm really disappointed that I didn't end up liking it, so I'm actually unhauling this. It's on my Pango currently, so if you were looking to get a pretty copy, you can check that out if you want. But now we're going to jump into the books that I did not talk about in my mid-month check-in because I read them in the second half of the month. So these are going to be brand new for you. First up is another arc. So this is the 4th arc that I read for the month, and it is This Girl's a Killer by Emma C. Wells. I've had this arc for a very long time, and I finally got around to reading it right before the book was going to be coming out. This was a 5-star about a vigilante justice serial killer, which I absolutely love. The main character was kind of unhinged, but also like relatable in a lot of ways. in the way that she carried herself. I thought this book was so much fun. There were lots of twists, and the whole book is basically her trying to evade capture because the police are investigating, but they don't know that it's her. And so she's trying to like continue being a serial killer while also not getting the police on her case. And I think it's really fun. I thought it was a great time. And there were a lot of connections towards the end of the book that were like, this author went there, and I have so much respect for it. This book was so much fun, and I am so glad that I got a chance to read it. Next up was Sleep Like Death by Kaylin Barron, and this is a Fairy Loot special edition. I was super excited. It's like very reflective. I love how pretty this book was, and also I ended up really enjoying the actual content of the story. I gave this book 3 stars. I think it was a little bit slow at times and it felt very YA. However, I think the story was a lot of fun, and I think I read that book in like a day and a half maybe. But speaking of pretty copies, the next book that I read was the second DNF of the month, and it was Long Live Evil by Sarah Reese Brennan, and I already unhauled this book and sold it on my Pango, so somebody else has my copy. This was a Fairy Loot special edition, and I'm really sad to get rid of a pretty book, but also I just did not care about the story. I was bored by it, and I just didn't want to keep going, so I ended up getting rid of that one. I don't have a whole lot else to say about it, but yeah, that was my second DNF of the month. I did give this one 2 stars when I officially rated it online, just because I can see where other people would like it. It just was not working for me, but it was a very pretty edition, so I'm happy to have rehomed it to somebody else. Next up was a 4-star read, and this was the audiobook that I got from Libro ALC program, and it was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Lori Gilmer, and this one was so much fun, but it was also so cute and cozy, and I just really had a great time, which is why this one got 4 stars. It's this like Hallmark movie, but spicy in this fall environment in a small town, and it's kind of got a little bit of a mystery element to it, but really the romance at the center of the story was so cute, and I just really had a good time listening to this book. So this one was a fun 4-star read. Next up was a 5-star read, and I loved this book. I think it's going to make it into some of my top books of the year just because of how fun and fast this book was. The Games Gods Play by Abigail Owen. This was the fancy first edition from Red Tower, and honestly, I'm so glad that the insides matched the pretty outsides. This book was so much fun. The chapters are so short. It was so fast. Like, it felt like the book moved along faster because you're getting through the chapters so quickly. It was just so much fun, and the plot itself, so good. This is a competition setting. It is basically the Greek gods each picking a tribute to go into the competition, and for the first time ever, Hades is going to pick somebody to be in the competition for him. So this is going to be a story about Hades and the champion that he chooses, and honestly, I never expected a book to make me fall for Hades, but here we are. I loved him in this book. I loved the whole dynamic. I feel like everything was just moving so fast. It was so fun. And because of the nature of the competition, there's a lot of like labors and tests and trials that they have to go through, which means that there's a lot happening. The story is constantly moving. Every chapter, something important is happening, and that just makes a book feel like it's moving really fast, which I think is one of the reasons why this book worked so well for me. Plus, the ending. Okay, here's the thing. I think this book would be really great as a standalone, but the ending really does set it up to have a really exciting premise for book 2, and I'm very excited for that. So I think it's fun because this can work on its own. If you are content to just stop after this book, that works completely fine, but if you want more, you can read the sequel and you're going to find out so much more. So I am very excited for when the sequel is going to come for this because it was a 5-star read and I loved it so much. But I have 2 more books that I want to talk about, and these 2 books are part of a series, which is why I saved them for last, even though I'm talking about them a little bit out of order. But here's the thing. I am in the middle of the series right now, so I'm reading the rest of them in November, and I'll be able to talk about them a little bit more. But for the first time ever, I was reading Elsie Silver. Started with Flawless, obviously, it's the first book in the series, and then moved on to Heartless, and let me tell you, these books are changing me as a person. I gave Flawless 4 stars. I really loved this introduction into the Chestnut Springs world, into Elsie Silver's writing, the depth of her romance, and the intricacies of everything that she writes. She has such complicated characters, and I love it. I love it. Plus, the Eaton family, being introduced to them, I love them. I love all of them. And then after reading this 4-star book, we come to Heartless. And let me just tell you that this book is 5 stars and also amazing. Like, I love this book. This book will live in my heart forever. Cade and Willa and Luke are just so precious to me. I did not expect to love the like single dad small town romance, and like here I am being obsessed with single dad Cade and the dynamic of the nanny that comes in and he falls in love with her. I loved it. I was eating it up. The fact that these are also like cowboy romances, this one, literal rodeo going on, I'm here for it. And this one, he works at a farm and he has a really cute kid. And the interactions with the kid were some of the best moments of the book. I love these books and I'm so excited to be sharing my thoughts on the rest of the series in November because I love them. I love the whole series. I am so excited about them. These are two of the books that I am reading for my Discord buddy read. I have a Discord that will be in the description. You can join. It is so much fun in there because I'm just like picking books that I want to read and that other people have mentioned that they also want to read, and we're reading them together and talking about it. And it's just a really great time. These were some of the books that I started with. I knew I wanted to read the Chestnut Springs series, and I knew a number of people who also wanted to read them. So I thought, why not set this up? And we are currently working through the ending of the series. So very excited about that. And in my Discord, I also have a Stephen King book club in which we read a different Stephen King book every month. It started in October and our selection was It. And I didn't finish It in October. I actually finished it last out of everybody that was reading it together. Go figure. And so I'm going to talk about that book in my November mid-month check-in because I did finish it at the beginning of November. So sorry you're not going to get that update here, but you will get it in my next video because I am very excited to be able to talk about this book. I have so many thoughts, like so many thoughts on this book, but it took me forever to get through because it's over 1,000 pages. And if you ask me, I don't think it needed to be, but I was super excited to be reading this during the Halloween season. It just like felt right for the atmosphere. And so I really had a good time reading this book, but I am going to talk about that a little bit more in November. Sorry if you came here excited for it, but I will talk about it soon, I promise. And if you do want to join in with the Stephen King book club, join that Discord. And I have a list of all the books that we're going to be reading in the coming months. We're currently reading 11/22/63, which is very fitting for November as well. So that brings me to the end of my October wrap up. I cannot believe that I finished 17 books. I feel like that just moved so quickly for me. Granted, I read 12 of them in the first half of the month and I don't know how I did that, but like it just felt so good. And by the end of the month, I was feeling a little bit of the burnout. I was starting to slow down quite a bit, but I was still having a great time with these books. Let me tell you, honestly, the Elsie Silver books really brought a fun ending to the month. So I am so happy about that. And I can't wait to be continuing in all of these books in the coming month. Now, please let me know if you have read any of these books and what you've thought. Share some love for some of these books because I love them. The 5 stars, the 4 stars, all of them. I had so much fun and I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've read them as well. If you liked what you saw here and you want to see more from me, or if you want to hear my updates on my November mid-month check-in and everything as I go through my TBR, make sure that you are hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything. I want to thank you so much for coming here and watching this video and supporting me, and I really hope that I will see you in the next video. Bye!